Hi, my name is Alicia Salcido. Welcome to my week 4 multimedia discussion for MPA 590 system theories. In this presentation, we're going to review natural system theory, middle range theory, open system theory, and how these theories have an impact on the task force. For our first theory, we have natural system theory. This theory, the organization or cooperative systems, they strive for survival based on the internal strains and stresses. These internal strains and stresses have many variables within themselves. An example in a variable would be like resources. So a company would have to figure out where they get their funding, or if it's like for instance, if it's like DPSS, they gotta make sure that they're meeting all rules and regulations, they're not being sanctioned, so they can continue to have the same amount of funding each year. They would also have to worry about if there was any recessions, would they receive a budget cut? So these are a lot of the factors that organizations have to deal with on a daily basis in order for them to strive as a organization, survive as an organization itself. Also, after reading the different articles that we had for this week, on chapter 9 on page 186 in the Thompson's book, they just kind of went over how the different variables do lead to a state of equilibrium. And by that state of equilibrium, it's using the energy of entropy. Basically, it's just some source of energy that the organization is consuming to strive for that equilibrium. And then in the article for Carousel, Measuring the Situational Nature of Management, he kind of further explains how variables are an important factor into the systems theory and how organizations are able to handle themselves. For our second theory, it's the middle range theory, which is actually known as the balance between contributing to the beneficiaries and how well we serve to those beneficiaries. When we're having this middle range theory, there is a process to it, just because it is the systems theory. And then when we're going through that process, we have to follow our rules and regulations. We overconform based on this. And then in chapter 10, page 216 in the Thompson's article, he kind of just goes over displacement, becoming a virtuous bureaucrat. We're just strictly following the rules. And by doing that, that's not going to create a sufficient relationship with our clientele, especially for any organizations. Clients are the only people who allow the organization to survive itself. So those relationships are needed. Even in the Bureaucratic Structure and Personality by Merton on page 123, he gives an example how these relationships are respected, especially between an official and a client, and that they are needed for an organization to survive, to meet their end goals. In Pawson Middle Range Realism, he kind of just goes over how Merton needing to do more on the theory itself. He doesn't believe Merton did a good job of explaining the whole process entirely. He believes he just did a half job. And then in this article, he just kind of goes more into depth about not reaching the end goal, but how this goal starts, like what resources or what variables or what hypothetically is needed in order for this whole systems to even be approachable to conduct. For our third theory, we have the open system theory. Basically, this is when we have all of our different inputs creating a process that's developing out our output, but we also have to include the different factors from our environment. On page 239, chapter 11 in Thompson's books, he kind of just goes over that process. And by him going over that process, it just made me realize, everything comes into a factor of this. Like, for example, if we have someone who's trying to go do a home visit, you got to worry about the time, you got to worry about traffic, to still meet your output goal. Also, in the organizational system concepts by Katz and Kahn on page 190, they also review that, not every process is going to be the same. There's going to be so many different ways that you can conduct this system and still reach your goal, even with all these different factors or different ways that this process is happening. And in the integrated and open system model, they just kind of go over like, the old process was to do it one certain way. The new process now for this tax administration is just to do just to include all factors, especially environmental factors, in order to complete the goal. Based on the three theories, the open system theory would actually have the most impact on the task force itself, just because the open system theory has to take in consideration of all the environmental factors plus the internal factors in order to reach the end goal. So, for an example, the unit, if they had to do a home visit, um, they would need to do the regular process in order to conduct the home visit, which would be their end goal. But now they have to take in consideration of all the external forces that are contributing to that end goal. So, like if there was traffic to on their way to the home visit, if there was a car accident, just any of those external stuff that's out of their control, that they don't have access to controlling, that's going to have a major effect on it. And that was the end of the presentation. Thank you guys very much for listening. I hope you guys have a nice day.